York-based Big Five publishing environment, and for that matter, brick-and-mortar stores, to really be objective. But here are the facts, and if you don't believe me, read the House Judiciary Committee report, which just came out, about Amazon and other companies in the tech sector that they believe are edging toward or already are monopolies. Anyway, according to the report, Amazon is responsible for 50% of all print book sales in the United States. That's not including eBooks, that's just print. More than 50% sold at Amazon, and 80% of all eBooks are sold at Amazon. You can see why they were talking monopoly. That's a big share, but even if that should happen in the future, it's not going to be overnight. And frankly, I don't know how they would break the thing up, although somebody I'm sure has some ideas. Bottom line, Red Sneaker writers, print books are not going away, but they are the minority, at least in some genres, and they will only become more so in the future. They may hang around as oddities or luxury items, but long-term, ebooks are not going away. So never get it into your head that they are when you're making your publishing decisions. My interview this time is with Pierce Gaynor, who, as I've already mentioned, is one of the two co-founders of Fictional, this AI software program that purports to be the writer's next friend, the editor that you always wanted but couldn't afford or didn't have the computer program to make work. I wanted to get to the bottom of this, so I talked about it with him, talked about where he came from and how they came up with it. And as you're going to hear in the interview, I've actually used it now a couple of times on manuscripts that we publish. Here's what Pierce had to say. Pierce, thanks for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Okay, my first traditional opening question. If you could give aspiring writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
And I'm going to take advice from one of my favorite books on writing, The Golden Book of Writing by David Lambeth. Yeah. And this is how he opens it up. But the object of any piece of writing is to make your reader understand exactly what you have to say and understand it as quickly and as effectively as possible. And along the same vein, I really like just the way that David Ogilvy, the famous copywriter, just kind of paraphrased this as well. But when Aeschines spoke, they said how well he speaks. When Demosthenes spoke, they said, let us march against Philip.
Wow, that makes a difference, huh?
Yeah.
And normally I would say, and how do you achieve that kind of clarity and force in writing? But you're probably going to say fictional, right?
I could, but that's definitely what we strive to do. But at the same time, I just also to kind of pair it from this book and then some of my other favorite books of writing. Just when writing, just clear thinking equals clear writing, and just knowing what you want to say ahead of time, or in the editorial process, going in and just making sure that there's a cohesive thought, clear thought to each sentence, paragraph, passage.
Sure. So how did you get started? I know that you're the CEO at Fictional, so I'm assuming you're pretty hands-on. How were you the one who came up with the idea for this?
Yep. So I'm one of the two co-founders. My other co-founder is John Pandage. He's our CTO, and we started building it out about 3 years ago. And Fictional actually started off as a literary site. We were aggregating content from publishers we were working with and from authors, and paying authors every time that someone read their work on our site. We were quickly so inundated with writing that we decided we need to try to figure out a way to kind of help us, one, in the editorial process for actual editing, and then two, helping us find, let's say, gems or diamonds in the rough. And so that's
where we're looking for a way to kind of siphon through all the over the transom submissions and shorten the review time.
In part to shorten it, but in part just we had a small editorial team. We had 5 editors, and we started receiving 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 manuscripts per month. and it's just beyond what we
Right.
could go through. And we
So,
quickly thought, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
We quickly thought, okay, let's start building this out, find a way to help us identify just fantastic writing, not necessarily that's completely polished or grammatically correct, but looking a little bit deeper than that. We were working with authors from abroad who spoke English as a second or third or fourth language. We wanted to identify writing that may have needed substantial work, but there's some really high quality writing there. And we started essentially on this path to building Fictional based on that thesis.
Now, I've often wished I had some thing that could help me with the usually not very fun job of editing, particularly in the final stages when it's not so much creative anymore, you're just trying to correct errors and find typos. But never once have I thought, I know, I'll create some kind of AI online editor. How did you get to that point?
Yeah. And so it really started off just from how do we help great writing thrive? How do we both cultivate and discover great writing? And that led us down a path of speaking. We probably spoke with about 150 editors, about 150 publishers. And it was from these conversations, we just tried to create the most useful tool possible. And part of that went not just identifying work, but also helping in the editorial process. And one of the benefits would be instead of just highlighting issues or having a computer look for, let's say, issues with clarity or any kind of grammatical or usage issue, but also having it where an editor could mark something up and then searching the document for that later on. And just being able to essentially aid to what you're saying once some of the creative work is done, helping out with the mechanics and the copy and line editing.
So now you've got Fictional, which is online and available to anyone, assuming they pay the fee, individuals or publishers, which is not a high fee at all, I might add. I suspect most of the people listening to this podcast are going to be individual writers more so than publishers. What's in it for them?
Great. And so for writers, the goal of Fictional is we essentially have two purposes: to evaluate writing and to improve writing. For writers, we're looking to help improve their writing. So essentially ensuring that your writing is clear, error-free, and appealing to your readers. And so in that regard, if you were to log into Fictional or test it out, I'd be happy to provide a coupon code for any writers interested in trying it for free. But essentially, a writer would upload their work. You see a report that details how many errors are in the manuscript, how close to complete is it, how original is the work. And then you could actually see comments on your manuscript as well, highlighting grammatical errors, issues with where you might be confusing readers, issues with consistency errors. We highlight cliches. And so really it's kind of having essentially almost kind of like a first read on your manuscript and just providing some copy and line edits.
And you don't have to look at it online the whole time, right? You can download that.
Correct. You can download it into Microsoft Word, and all the Fictional comments are available on track changes.
Which is what most people are used to at this point, how people edit one another. So that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's perfect, really. On your website, you talk about, among the other things, that it provides, that Fictional provides everything from big scale comments to granular feedback. What do you mean by that? What's granular feedback?
Granular feedback, even to the point of, let's say if there's a font change and your quotation mark differs, or if there's a space that's left out, if there's a line break that, let's say, Microsoft Word may not catch, all the way down to just even formatting issues, highlighting those. But then just your spelling errors, any kind of errors with syntax, going a little bit higher. Mentioned cliches before, but let's say if there's a passage that's a little bit verbose as written, if there's some information that may not be necessary, if, let's say, you use a lot of adjectives over a long sentence, just highlighting that this may be problematic for readers. And then going a step higher, just looking at the work as a whole and seeing how does it compare to other works, other passages of writing, both in terms of completeness, craft, and originality.
That's impressive. Okay, I got to ask, because I see this coming up in manuscripts all the time, where somewhere in the translation process, some of the quotation marks have shifted. It's gone from the curvy ones to the straight ones. If only for a few lines. Would Fictional catch that?
Yes.
Wow.
We should catch that part. My slight hesitation there is it happens more often than you'd realize, and we actually had to tone down how often it caught it because sometimes it's to the point where
that's all you see.
It's negligible. Yeah.
Right.
And so that it should call that out and highlight it, but at the same time, we try not to highlight it too often.
Yeah. It's a problem if it happens once or twice, or like character's name changes, which I've done more than once, sort of forgotten that Brenda is Brenna or the other way around. And that's the kind of thing that you need it to catch for you.
Yes.
Okay, on your website, you say that Fictional deals with clarity, originality, and completeness. And I've sort of heard you talk about at least one of those, but originality, I mean, that sort of goes against the grain. You think I'm going to go to an artificial intelligence for originality? How does that work?
Yeah, and so that actually kind of fits square within the realm of kind of what deep learning and other kind of subsets of artificial intelligence can look at. And so comparing just a large data set of writing and seeing where does one writing essentially differ from another in terms of style and content. And so this is actually one of the better use cases for this technology, is seeing how similar documents are.
Wow. And what about completeness? What do you mean by completeness? What's the program looking for there?
So from a completeness standpoint, this is a combination of the overall work of writing when compared to writings that have been, let's say, judged as a complete thought, a complete manuscript, but it's also factoring in any kind of errors that are, let's say, inherent in the manuscript. If we highlight a lot of grammatical errors, which we call corrections, a lot of one step up kind of line edits, which we call suggestions, and our insights, if there's a lot of items flagged there, that'll lower the completeness score.
That's also impressive. One last thing, and we've talked about this before, but with respect to customizing, you say to some degree the program can be customized by individuals, right?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Yeah. And so this is more for the kind of the publishing tier, but every aspect of the platform is pretty much customizable. So that score that you see on a manuscript the moment it's uploaded, this can be customized to an individual publisher based on works that they've published previously, what they're looking to see based on relevancy to their publication. The copy edits, the line edits that we mark up, these can be ignored, they can be added. If there are any rules that a publisher would like to see, we can add them in. Same with writers as well. If any writers have any suggestions, we're more than amenable to adding that into the platform. But then from a editorial standpoint, on the publishing tier, if an editor were to mark up a comment and assign a tag for that sentence, Fictional can then look throughout the entire document and try to flag similar instances of what was marked up.
So it sounds like that's not something the individual does, but something where, like, I would email you and ask you to customize the searches that I initiate. Is that right?
Yes, a little bit of both. And so on the publishing customizable tier, pretty much every interaction will improve the system to the publisher, or will at least have the system learn what the publisher is looking for. But from adding, let's say, style guides or updating that score, that's going to be some work that Fictional is going to have to do. And so sharing what your rules are, or sending over some manuscripts that you identify as you want works that are similar to that, that's stuff that we'll have to do internally.
So I could do or tell you, email and say, Pierce, I overused the word just. I don't know why, but I say just way too much. Can I just have this program highlight every just in the manuscript for me?
Something similar to that, yeah. So we actually, on our summary page, we do have overused words. We have it hidden right now, but we can make that, essentially, we've got about we have a fair amount of metrics that we don't show on the immediate summary. We can bring that forward and then essentially enable it so it highlights those words in the document as well.
What's the point of it if it's hidden? Does that just go to the score that it gives the manuscript, but it doesn't get marked in the comments?
The purpose of hiding was so we didn't show too much information. Just as we were speaking with publishers, editors, and writers, our original report was about 4 times as long. And just without presenting too much information, we just wanted to have it be essentially a page and a half of a snapshot. But there's a lot more information that goes into essentially everything on the back end. And as people